glad to be a visitor in your city for this Elevate Festival.
Man, listen, I'm just appreciative to be asked, and to be juxtaposed to you is nothing but an honor always. Seriously, honestly.
No, the honor is mine. Listen, I want to listen. Not only thank you, Baba, thank Elevate, Leatrice Elsie Wright, curator extraordinaire from Hammond's House. Such a brilliant culture keeper and warrior defender of the people. Has been the whole time I've known her. Amazing over the decades. And peace to our sister Robbie Wyndham too for getting us together.
Absolutely.
And for you, Baba, for those of you who don't know Daniel Black in your city, shout out to the West End in particular, but Atlanta, for y'all who don't know Daniel Black, and I know everybody does, you know, there's no greater love for our people than what this brother has demonstrated in his life. I mean, I can say that to you, Baba, and I want to say that to you publicly. I mean, the Yoruba have a term, Omoluabi, and you know, it's like a community spirit, somebody who is for the community. But in that term is Iwa, the word Iwa. And we know, you know, in Yoruba, it means both existence and character, because community is based on that. You know, our community is our existence, and you're the most honest, brilliant, and deeply grounded practitioner of community that I've ever known and that I will ever know, brother. So I want to say it's an honor to be here with you to have a little bit of conversation about what you see in the future for us, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, sir, what I'm going to say first is it is certainly equally an honor to be here with you, and the depth of your knowledge, man, the practice of what you do, and the way you spread knowledge around this world, like this whole world, is something that is just magical. You have the gift of what we call in Ndugu-Nzinga, you have the gift of ma'arifa, which is the gift of knowledge, the gift of wisdom. And it is in your very blood to gather knowledge and to gather information and to help us understand the correlation between variables. And we need it badly. And I'm here really to tell you that Black people's hope, man, looks like you.
Oh,
it really does.
I accept that, brother, since I'm a reflection of you, and we reflect each other. So, you know, I mean, where are we going, brother? I think they asked us to talk about what race, culture, community, patterns, trends, cultural markers. What is the future of Black America, Dr. Black? Can you help us with that?
Well, I don't know if I can help us. You know, but I can tell you some things I've been thinking about, which yes, I certainly want to see what you've been thinking about too. And you know, I've been thinking about Paul Cuffey, actually.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You talking about leaving, brother? You gonna take the boat?
Okay, exactly. Listen. And here's why. You know, and I never really thought I'd ever get here ideologically, Baba, but I think I'm here. And that is, of course, what Paul Cuffey and others were trying to tell us is that America was a conscious design ideologically from its inception. And it is now what it was.
No question.
Right?
No question.
And Black people's problem is we're trying to figure out how it can be what we dreamed.
Oh, what Langston say? America never was America to me.
It never was America, absolutely.
But then he said, "This is not how America will be." So you saying do you think we should be dreaming that dream?
No, not at all. I think we should be absolutely, positively having conversations about where else Black people could go geographically.
Wow.
I definitely believe that. Because the thing that at some point, we're not there yet, but at some point, the thing Black people must get tired of doing is hoping and believing in white transformation. We must get tired of that at some point. Folks like yourself and I, you know, we are already tired, but collectively, we're not tired of that yet. And one of the reasons we're not tired is because if we ever do get tired of that, the only other question is where we going. Huh. See, we really can't afford not to believe in white people's transformation. Because if we ever say white people are never going to change, this is what life here is going to be like. The day we agree to that will also be the day where we have to ask, because only a fool is going to stay in a place where not only are you not invited, but where for centuries people have been trying to kick you out.
So does that mean we've been fools up to now, or
in some ways it does? Not everybody, but in some way. But I'm only saying now because we now have advantage that our ancestors did it, right? The marching, the praying, the reconciliation. Our ancestors did, and I honor them completely. I honor them totally. Right. However,
no
to ask the same question that our ancestors asked 50 years later is a dishonor to them. Because the question they asked has already been answered, right? And that question is, you're not welcome here. You're not welcome here. And the thing that we have to admit is, as Ava DuVernay says, the system is not broken, it's working beautifully.
Oh, no question about that.
So if this system is working beautifully, but that destroys me, then something is wrong with me if I believe I can't live anywhere other than here. See, it's really a very deep-seated psychological thing for Black people to believe that we are held captive in this land.
Interesting.
Because see, to believe that we're held captive in this land means we have no imagination that our existence could flourish anywhere else outside of whiteness or the juxtaposition of American whiteness. What do you think?
That's heavy. Well, first of all, if this country disappeared tomorrow, I wouldn't shed a tear. In fact, I'd feel free.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So that's first thing. And anybody who would say that that's a radical position or an illogical position, or we've shed blood, what's a lot of blood been shed since the birth of humanity?
Absolutely.
We haven't even shed a drop in the context of world history. So the idea, well, our ancestors are buried here. No, our ancestors are buried in Africa. A few of our ancestors are buried here. But let's be clear.
Let's be clear. Right.
So, but so that's first of all. But but you have Baba, you've raised something that a lot of our folk, and I'm thinking about the young people that you have raised over the decades. And, even though we're the same biological age, I count myself as one of those young people. In fact, as I tell my students all the time, and for those of you watching a few weeks ago, Dr. Black spent a week with us at Howard in our Introduction to African-American Studies class with this book right here, which if you haven't read, you should read it, The Coming. This book right here should be in everybody's house. I understand everybody's reading how to be anti-racist, but let's get away from the kind of white face and minstrelsy. Let's get to the real thing. This is the thing itself. Because this book right here, this book captures what people try to do to us and what we would not allow them to do to us. In that moment, it's beautiful, brother. So, but in that moment, you really revived in my spirit this sense that wherever we are, we build community and we cannot be destroyed as long as we're very clear about that. So, but what you put on the table now is a reminder, I think, for folks like the young people who you raise, like the young people who, you and I teach, they don't get a chance if they're not at a HBCU. And frankly, even if they are at a historically Black college and don't have professors,
that's right,
who are in Black studies or who are too worried about them getting internships and jobs in this collapsing criminal enterprise called the United States of America, who don't have the background. They're not aware that what you just raised is something that we've been raising since before we hit these shores.
Right.
When you say Paul Cuffey, somebody might not know. This is a brother in the late 18th century who finances the ships. He says,
That's right.
And during that same time, he's in New England, but there are people who are debating whether we should stay or go. And this is when the smoke from the American Revolution hasn't cleared yet.
That's right.
And think about the fact that, a brother who you've taught many times, the Igbo brother or Aluda Equiano, they come get him as a 11-year-old boy. And he's in England trying to elicit the help of George III's wife, Charlotte, who's got some Black ancestry.
Right.
You need to get rid of this slavery business, man. This Igbo boy who was kidnapped, who was enslaved. So, there's always been this sense that we should just leave. Right. And, that half century between the end of the so-called American Revolution, well, more than a half century, that really, several generations between the end of the American Revolution and the Civil War, those Negro convention movements, Richard and Sarah, and then Henry Garnett is like, look, man, let's just fight.
Absolutely.
Freddie Douglass trying to calm him down. David Walker's appeal. Let's just, they say they're Christians, ask them if they're going to let you go. If they tell you no, tell them, no, you're not a Christian, in fact, but you are the devil. And so there, I am authorized to end my oppression by any means. I mean, so people might not be aware.
That's right.
You know, that what you're saying, man, that's not new. In fact, it's not new. In fact,
that's the point.
Yeah, that is the point. But should we leave? Let me.
That's the point. The point is that,
no, go ahead, Bob.
The point is that the narrative is so old. In fact, that's why I'm revering Paul Cuffey, because he was saying, "Hey, listen, if you think that blackness is going to, at some point, that Negro-ness, Africanness is going to, at some point, be honored and going to be revered in this place, not only are you fooling yourself, but for all practical purposes, you're going to have to also absolutely agree to be something less than yourself in order to make this thing work here. Because America as a concept does not include the humanity of black people."
Right. Well, really, almost really the humanity of anyone.
All right, right. That's right. Now we really gonna go there. That's right. Because really, racism has destroyed even the potential humanity of white folks too. In fact, more than us.
No question.
Right.
No question.
So somewhere here, but see, the real issue, the real sadness for me in terms of where our people are is, and people will say this argument of, well, you know, we built this country. That is true. That is true. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that argument is it's like the ant. Right, I was teaching in Ndugu-Nzinga the other week about the ant. When the ant builds a mound, you can take a stick and disturb it. The ant won't look up at you. The ant continues being itself, and it just rebuilds it. And so, y'all, we're a building people by name. We're creative people. Sure, we built America. It is true, but you don't stay in a place just because you the author of it. It's like, you know, I'm not looking for the Jews to go buy Auschwitz.
How about that? Shout out to Tyler Perry. All the great stuff. But bruh, I understand what you're trying to say, but you know, crowing about buying an old Confederate.
Absolutely. No. It's a kind of psychosis if a woman wants to buy the room wherein somebody raped her. Like, what is that?
Come on. And then live there.
Right, and then move in as if that is the insult to the oppressor. No. And we're doing this thing of like, I want to go buy the plantation where my ancestors worked. But see, here's the thing. We're buying it because we think that by owning it, we're insulting the whites who once owned it.
Which means that we are still seeing ourselves almost as a figment of the white imagination.
That's exactly correct.
Why are we even thinking about it? I mean, you know,
that's
Bobby,
right.
So how, I mean, well, I think about that old Richard Pryor joke when he's like, well, you know, don't you hate when they interview black people and they say things like, why don't they ever talk about us? We fought against the Indians. He said, shut up, fool. You want them mad at us too? I mean, I want to know, why do we want credit for helping build this criminal enterprise as people who were prisoners of war? Why do we want credit for building stuff in the death camps?
Because
I don't.
See, it seems to me that too many, not all, but too many of our people have this notion that we cannot build anything else.
Oh.
So it's like, this is it. This is all we get.
But the metaphor you use of the ant is so powerful. We are building people. Like Equiana said, we're a nation of poets and singers and dancers.
Absolutely. And we come out of slavery and build churches and schools with $5.
Brother. Oh man, we just had the class. I was in the Education Black America class earlier. We were talking about the Rosenwald schools.
Mm-hmm.
I asked the students because they had read James Anderson's book, The Education of Blacks in the South. And I said, you know, and what's crazy is I have students just like you. I mean, I had a young sister who's 19 years old, whose grandmother, she was reading the book. She told her grandmother last week, we're reading this book. Her grandmother told her, she said, Dr. Carr, I never knew this. My grandmother went to a Rosenwald school. She said, they're in Raleigh, North Carolina. She said they got in the car and drove to the Rosenwald school her grandmother went to, and her grandmother started talking about education during that period.
Wow.
So I asked them a question. I knew they knew the answer because they read. I said, now, why do they call them Rosenwald schools? And one of the young people said, because Rosenwald gave the seed money. That's exactly right. People think, if they know all about the Rosenwald schools, Thousands of schools, of course, built in the South in the first third of the 20th century.
Right.
But what they don't know is, most people don't know, even if they know that name, he didn't give the majority of the money. As you said, black people, he would put $1 in, and black folks go raise $1.50 or $2 for every dollar he put in. So for the millions Rosenwald gave, black people raised more, and they were double taxing themselves because they paid taxes, and those taxes went to the white schools. And the only time the white state governments and local governments started giving money for the Rosenwald schools, the so-called Rosenwald schools, was when black people started the Great Migrations. When them Negroes started leaving, these white people said, well, we got to give them some more money because they are leaving for a better life for their children.
Right.
But to your point, coming out of enslavement, even when we were debt peonage, when we were in sharecropping, they would negotiate and say, look, I know I'm going to be tied to this land for a long time, maybe the rest of my life, but part of the contract of me being here, you got to build a school for my child.
That's right.
I mean, so there is a certain betrayal, right? Because all this gets folded into American. That's not American history. I mean, it is American history,
is, right? But
that wasn't our objective.
That's right. That's the point. It wasn't our objective. That's right.
And so, I mean, you know, when you say that, I think about a place like Atlanta, for example, and of course, Du Bois,
right?
Who, you know, a brother who taught where you teaching. I mean, that bus Du Bois. I mean, you talked about him when they did the dedication. They had the celebration of those black folk, and that bus right outside your office,
right?
Of Du Bois. And I think about the fact that he had to leave Atlanta University. He said, because they're not giving my friend John Hope and them, they're not giving them money because I'm here talking like this. He says, so if I'm the problem, if I can't do this work for black people, I'll leave Atlanta University. And so, but I think about Du Bois when he writes in Souls of Black Folk, and when he writes later on about Atlanta, and he talks about Atlanta being the place that's named for, you know, the golden apples and money and greed, and you know, but let me ask you this, Baba, because when you talk about leaving, people get nervous.
Yeah.
And so, but I guess my question is, where do you see in this whole thing we call America, and we'll talk about patterns and what's going on there, where do you see the Native Americans? Because it seems to me when people say slavery is the original sin, I'm like, you're just going to erase our blood.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
I don't understand that, Baba. Why do we do that?
You know, people pick which group. It's really issue of white supremacy. And yeah, I'm going to say it.
Oh.
Because see, black people are blacker than Native Americans.
Yes, sir.
And so the blacker the person, the whiter the white people get to be.
That's true. Oh, that's absolutely true.
Yeah. So black people then become a better means by which whiteness and white supremacy gets to suggest itself as being pure.
Interesting.
So black people are a better juxtaposition, if you will, because you can even dirty white become pristine white next to blackness.
Isn't that something? And that's the only thing it becomes. People are going to lose the entire healthcare to preserve whiteness.
Crazy, man.
Instead of being, but actually that, you know, it's interesting because, okay, so let's say, what are we sitting on now in America? With 230 some million people, you know, they're going to try to cave the census, but we know that, but 230 some million people, increasingly non-white, you know, by the time, you know, I mean, what are we saying? It's not even 2050 now.
Right.
I mean, you know, the first generation of majority non-white babies are already here.
Right.
5-year-olds and under, 6-7-year-olds now and under.
Right.
So what does it mean to think about a physical departure at a moment when the demographics are going to collapse this settler project?
Well, see, it seems to me, right, in terms of a person who attempts to be a student of history, it seems to me that the shifting in the demographic, which absolutely is true, that's 100% true what you're saying. What it does not do is shift in white supremacy's imagination, the extent to which they despise blackness.
No, that's true. Oh, no. Now they've dropped all pretenses. I mean, between the electoral college and the judiciary, they're going to try to run this thing for another 50 years. It's
Absolutely, absolutely. And see, even if we didn't leave this land, technically, even if Black people coalesced in some place, right, to kind of build a nation within a nation, what I'm really saying is, answer for Black people is Black people's own agency. The answer for Black people is for Black people to say, okay, we're gonna get together with other Black people. Because, and the irony is, not to trust each other as Black people is the quintessential sign of Black self-hate. Because if there's anybody we would go not trust, it's not people who look like us.
When did that happen?
If we're gonna take a risk, we should take a risk on people who look like us.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, yeah, that's interesting you say that, because there seems to be, and help me if you're seeing this. I mean, because you're a culture worker. I mean, you're a writer. I mean, an artist, musician. So many. You're a culture keeper. The sense I'm getting, and maybe it's because it is skewing that way now in the popular culture, but that there's a kind of weakening among some of our people, really the young people. There's a weakening of the susceptibility to these mythologies of national identity.
That's
like,
right.
when I look at something like Lovecraft Country, or better yet, what's our girl Regina King was in that Watchmen. I mean, there's a weakening of the idea that we got to buy into that BS that we never bought anyway. That George Washington, you're not my dad. I mean, all that. So we never had any real connection to it anyway. Now, we had the public facing Black elite who tried to run it. Woodson tried to sell it. Richard Wright, who was down there in Atlanta, of course, moves to Philadelphia. He's got national, the day now you're going to have celebrations. But this young generation there seems to be a weakening susceptibility. And then you see somebody like Beyonce with Black is King. And we all have our criticisms of experiment, but there seems to be a willingness to trust Black and to trust Black internationally, regardless of national boundaries.
Yes.
What does that say to you in terms of a trend that we see among our young people, and what that might mean in terms of agency?
The thing about, it's funny you mentioned Beyonce and Black is King, because I talked about that several Fridays ago on Facebook Live, and I walked people through Black is King.
Did you?
And the meaning of and one of the things I was saying then is that where people could sleep if they're not careful is that Beyonce is studying somewhere.
Oh, no question about it.
Because Beyonce is talking about ritual, and Beyonce is talking about Oshun and Yemaya, right? And Beyonce is talking about African ideals, and philosophies, right? That would come from concentrated, intense study of African traditions.
Absolutely.
And I'm very proud of her about that. The reason I'm bringing this up is because I don't know that the average listener, right, is listening closely enough to understand that these motifs and ideas that Beyonce has put together. Because see, what Beyonce really does, and I think it's brilliant, really, at least on the surface, the thing Beyonce does, Beyonce, ironically, right, because this is on Disney's channel, right? The irony is she's correcting Disney.
No question.
Right? Because what Beyonce does is Beyonce puts human beings in Africa.
How about that?
Right? So that this Lion King is going to be people, not animals.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right.
And so Beyonce is signifying upon the very platform that's hired her, right, or that's paying her for this movie.
Okay, so now okay. So we're in this country. We realize that the only people who think that patriotism is the most important thing are the people who don't understand the nature of the nation state and capital. The corporations are multinational. They use states as holding places for their money, right? So the poor whites generally, at least the MAGA crowd, are holding on to that whiteness you talked about.
Absolutely.
That's what Gerald Horne calls it, what he says, the battle pay they get for standing between the rest of the poor and those white elites who don't give a damn about a flag of any nation. Their money goes everywhere.
Right.
But you just evoked somebody who is spilling over those national boundaries, making these connections. So is Disney clearly does not see her as enough of a threat.
That's right.
Shut it down. So is even that type of cultural work a threat to a capitalist system that really doesn't matter what you say as long as they still get to control the labor?
But I think yes, because I'm not sure Disney even knows what Beyonce did.
Aha.
I think she's doing subversion. I think she's doing cultural subversion.
I mean, it's going to penetrate the African market. It's going to do what Black Panther did. It's going to penetrate the global market.
Absolutely.
And so you're saying they still didn't see it. You don't think they saw it?
Right. I don't think Disney, because I think Disney is so blindly racist in so many ways that I don't think they had any idea whatsoever that her putting Black children in Africa, right, was a corrective, right, to their notion that everything in Africa is animalistic. I don't think they caught that at all.
Sure. And that's how ironic is that, Baba?
How ironic.
I mean, the fact that because you teach African narratives and you teach African, for lack of a better term, folklore.
Right.
That human beings rarely appear in our narratives from the continent. We use animals. I mean, even Aesop, the Ethiopian. How ironic is it that has now been converted in many ways into a racist trope?
Right.
That, when we were in Africa, we didn't use humans. We used the animals to tell the stories. And now that we're here, they try to use the animals when talking about Africa as a way to erase. Well, I guess Disney is the equal opportunity racist, because I guess they did the same thing in the Jungle Book. I mean, they put the one boy Mowgli in there, but the animals could talk. But okay, so all right, well, help me with this then. If they're not getting it, how do we weaponize that culture? Because I mean, one of the patterns we see, at least, I don't know, you help me, maybe, hopefully you see the same thing, maybe not. There seems to be a weakened collective resistance under these waves of structural violence, these waves of state violence.
Absolutely. Yes, but that's because, unlike yourself and myself, and I thought about this maybe a month ago. After the 90s, we ceased really having a reading culture.
Wow.
Right. So, I remember, being in grad school with you, and we were literally eating up knowledge. I mean, from
no question.
Reading some of just everything. You know what I mean? And at that time, we could write a decent sentence back then.
Well, they weren't gonna let you out of Clark Atlanta or me out of Tennessee State without that, because we caught that last wave of professors.
That last wave.
Jim Crow, brother. Yes,
that
sir.
Last wave. I've told people this. We caught that last wave.
Yeah, we did.
I'm telling you, I had those teachers who had gone to segregated schools, those professors, and they were not playing. When they said 5 o'clock, bring that paper 501 here.
You keep it. Well, you know what, brother? And it's funny, man. They're in Atlanta. She's 100. She'll be 102. Jamie McDonald Williams, who was my professor at Tennessee State. She and her husband, McDonald Williams, the first woman editor of the AME Church Review, Tennessee State, man. But when I think about the great scholar, in fact, I was just reading Robert Brisbane's book, The Black Vanguard, and
Vanguard,
Warhouse, man. I mean, when I think about those cats that came through there, we were very fortunate to get them. But so you're saying then that reading culture, you think that has a major impact then?
I've been reading this lately, right?
Oh, come on, brother. Wait a minute. Oh, wait, no, I don't see where it is. I got mine around here somewhere. I have to,
look at that, brother.
Wow. Woo. Hey, man, this is this got to go right here with this. Put them together. Coming and the education of Black people, brother.
Man,
why turn to do this book in particular for Du Bois? Why that one, Baba?
Because I think there are some philosophical things Du Bois says about knowledge and the nature of knowledge in this book.
Oh my God.
And there are ways in here too. I can't remember exactly, but there are ways that he critiques even his own Harvard education.
Oh yes, he does.
Yeah,
brother.
That I think is so important. And what that suggests to me is, at some point, what Du Bois comes to realize is what, man, you just said, and that is his real education happened at Fisk.
Oh, no question about it. It's no question about
it. The fact of the matter is, if he could get in, as he did, get into Harvard and perform as well as he did at Harvard, the question then is not what happened at Harvard. The question is, what was so excellent prior to Harvard that Harvard had to take him?
Oh, no question. I mean, in that tight knit Black community in Great Barrington.
That's right, Great Barrington. In fact, I've been literally to the spot where he was born. I went up there.
Really?
Yeah, I went up there with
all these years, really?
Yeah,
brother.
I have a friend who has a cabin up in northern Connecticut, and so we drove back because I said I want to go to Great Barrington. I want to see where this great ancestor, and so I saw the little house.
Yeah,
of course, it's a National Historic Site now and everything.
But
I think what's really important is back to the see we've lived a long enough time now in America where if a person does not bring a historical context and historical knowledge to this historical moment, they will begin to think about things historically as if they are creating knowledge. When really you're repeating knowledge.
There's no question about it. In fact,
you don't know you're repeating knowledge because you haven't read it.
That's right.
So you're claiming yourself is original.
Right. That's the issue. One of the issues. That's another pattern we see. Post Jim Crow.
Right.
Now that we are maybe 3 generations past the hard Jim Crow, and maybe 2 good generations since the 60s, there have been, I guess we're probably in maybe the 3rd wave of Black academics who have been cultivated outside of Black spaces to be kind of white-facing Black interpreters. And like you said, before when we had American apartheid, all those great intellects were at the service of the race. And didn't matter what side you were on in terms of the vocational education, liberal arts. I mean, hell, George Washington Carver, one of the greatest scientists produced in the 20th century, he's at Tuskegee helping farmers figure out how to get more yield out their fertilizer. I mean, so I'm saying, but now it's interesting you mentioned this. All the shelves of books about Du Bois, and now they want to talk about emancipatory pedagogy.
Right.
All this stuff is tied to white institutions.
That's right.
Have nothing to do with us.
Nothing.
But they want to write. Let me not be too accusatory, because I don't think anybody has an adverse purpose. But I do think that the pattern is this country, this society, this system tries to create and cultivate, since the end of apartheid, has tried to generate a handful of safety valves, so that whenever things looked like they were going to get completely out of hand, they could use them as one of the many tools to kind of manage us.
Absolutely.
When you mentioned Du Bois, man, I think about, in that book in particular, I think it's the first talk he gave. He was at Hampton, and he says, if I could find it, man, hold on, let me see because I keep that one marked. Yeah, here it is. He says, when you see these Black people who have this, he said, this is the great fear. That's what he talked about. He said, the great fear is that these Black people are going to get organized, and they're going to use that energy to do what they need to do for themselves. He says, when you see those type of Negroes, this is what you need to do. Deal carefully with them, he says. Put their rights in the background, emphasize their duties, say little of ambition or aspiration, and above all, watch and ward against the first appearance of arrogance or self-assertion or consciousness of great power. But here's the line that gets me, Bob, and as the writer, brother, I know this man. He says, take the eyes of these millions off the stars and fasten them in the soil. And if their young men will dream dreams, let them be dreams of cornbread and molasses.
Wow.
I mean, but when I think about that, in 1906, that makes sense. 1905, 1906. But if you fast forward to today, when our young people are being seduced, or the attempt is made to seduce them into dreams, what's the cornbread and molasses?
That's right.
The cornbread and molasses is just work your job.
That's right.
Chase your bag.
That's right. Do your hustle.
Get your hustle, right? And so that intellectual class, that thinking class, Beyonce definitely studying. Can she penetrate to change and elevate the consciousness? I mean, can people like her? Is there a chance for them to be able to do that?
I think so. Now, see, let me tell you the other problem that I think is the issue too.
Okay.
And that is, since maybe the 80s, I'm going to say, maybe since we were in grad school, I'm thinking something else shifted too in terms of Black people. I've been reading this book too, was Ontological Terror.
Oh yeah, How is that? How is that, Bob?
Yeah, it's a brilliant. It's very dense in terms of language.
Yes.
Right? But the concept is fantastic. It's basically saying that Blackness is a requirement for the sustaining of white supremacy, and that Blackness, by definition, will always be underfoot of whiteness. Blah 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 blah. Right? But it's really it puts it in very philosophical terms. But it's very wonderful. The thing I was going to say that I have observed is, in the last 30 years or so, for the first time, really since enslavement forward, one of the problems that has happened in the Black community is that our, unlike folks like me, you, right, there are others like Sam, right, like Dana, our best minds are no longer the educators.
Oh, that's the truth. That's absolutely true.
Our best Black minds are being siphoned into corporate America, into other places, because of course, we're following dollars and no cents. Right.
And how are you defining best? Right.
Our sharpest academic minds, our best students, our best performing students. And this is important though, because see, this is important because when your mediocre students become the teachers,
brother, or better yet, when your celebrities become the teachers.
When your now
and this isn't a critique of celebrity, it's an acknowledgement that the devaluation of teaching generally in this country. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't even say that, Baba. This country's never valued education.
Right.
I mean, when Thomas Jefferson says, give all the white people 3 grades, and after the 3rd grade, take the boys that have some promise and pay for them to keep going to get education. What about the Black people? Oh, we're not even talking about Black people. Right. But so they've never had, I mean, and then of course, Du Bois says, right, again, writing Black Reconstruction in America, 1935, he said, in the South, public education was a Negro idea. We came out of enslavement like, look, everybody should be able to read and write. And then these poor whites get public education and turn around and join with these elite whites to try to block us after we created the system that let their children go to school. So yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. I mean, has that been a transition that you see really emerging since the 60s? I mean, the idea that celebrities now,
because see, one thing that was happening in the Black community that I don't think very many people have really analyzed enough, and that is there was a symbiotic relationship between 2 institutions that at one time was only true in the Black community particularly. And that symbiotic relationship did a magical kind of work in terms of sustaining Black life and keeping Black people clear about who they were. And that is the fact at one time, the school was the church.
Oh, no question.
Not that the 2 existed. They were the same thing. They would literally transform it on Saturday night for Sunday morning, and then Sunday night transform it back. And see, we know the fact of that. I'm saying there's a kind of symbiotic relationship happening there, where Black people were teaching that you cannot be spiritual without knowledge, so that the spirit and knowledge happened in the same physical place. Now, some of them could not have articulated this themselves, but I'm saying really, in some ways, there was a cultural symbol that was doing a work greater than even many of the people realized who were sitting in the place, right? This notion that you could literally flip over, for all practical purposes, the church into the school and then flip the school back into the church.
Right.
There's something that Black people understood, right, in terms of how knowledge and spirit were twins.
Interesting. I'm thinking through this as you're talking. I'm trying to, because we see spirituality. We're still very spiritual people,
right?
But as you say, the displacement of the institutional formations, whether it be the church, which is the law, right? Or really from what, maybe the 50s, 60s, 70s, the mosque in terms of the nation and those, I mean, the displacement of the institutions has left subsequent generations to search for that spirituality in ways that really almost are pursued so individualistically. It's like, it's interesting to see now this fascination with Africana spiritual traditions. But there's no institutional formation to channel that interest.
And you're saying what I'm saying. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes. No, I'm thinking about it as you're talking. Yeah.
Because what's also messing up these young people, even when they go to an African, even when they go to an African spiritual system, what's messing up so many young people is that African spiritual system still requires discipline to follow.
Exactly. There's no structure. Right. So when you're doing Ndugu-Nzinga, you know, there's a family. You're building an institution. It's anchored in the culture. So then there's really no way. I hear what you're saying, man. I mean, whether it be our schools, because now we see, of course, you know, people are giving a few crumbs to our HBCUs, and make no mistake about it. You know, I know the Amazon, the lady who was married to Jeff Bezos, you know, whatever name, gave what $100 million to a number of HBCUs, but there have been a couple of dozen billionaires created since March with this plague, and Amazon stock has shot through the roof. So she made that money back probably the week she gave it. But the whole point, there's been some money, you know, but our Black schools without a Black curriculum. And of course, I mean, you there at the AUC, man. I was talking to some students the other day, man, talking about the fact that after Dr. King was killed, some students from Morris Brown and Morehouse and Spelman and Clark, you know, and Atlanta University came together and said, you know what, we should rename this whole campus the Martin Luther King University. I think Vincent Harding was teaching at literature at Spelman at the time. You know, and then of course, Ms. King recruits him to go to the King Center, and he starts what becomes the Institute of the Black World. But you know, when Lerone Bennett and Janetta Cole and Joyce Ladner and Vincent Harding and them, right there across from where your office is,
absolutely.
Right at the Institute of the Black World, absolutely. Black institutions without a Black curriculum. And I think about even with literacy and what they do in the Hammond's House, and even this festival, Elevate. I mean, we've got to have cultural institutions that are unafraid and unapologetic to anchor ourselves, or else, as you say, we can't even imagine.
That's right.
Or when we do imagine, it becomes a kind of escapist imagination.
Absolutely. Because for the most part, we're not in Black institutions.
No.
We're Black people. We're Black people in an institution.
That's right. That's right.
Right.
And with all due respect to our brother Tip Harris, ain't no Wakanda, brother. That's a fantasy.
That's right. And not until we make it.
Right. And understand the thing about Wakanda is, yeah, it ain't about the dress and the music and the memory. That's all. It's about to defend yourself when Thanos shows up.
That's
so
right.
If you can't defend yourself, you don't have no Wakanda, brother.
That's right. That's right. But see, that's why, for me, there was a time when the church in segregated Black communities, the church, the school, right? It was all one institution.
No question.
And I'm saying there's a work that symbiotic relationship did that we have not yet uncovered. We know that the school and church were one. We got that. I'm saying there's a cultural, there's an ideological work that was going on, right? So that the discipline of studying and the discipline of walking with God were taught in the same seat.
Oh no, I'm with you. I'm with you.
And I'm saying that creates something that now, and of course, after basically the 60s, we of course surrendered, for all kind of reasons both of us understand, the education of our children unto our enemy.
How about that?
Right.
How about that?
So the notion that our children were going to come home loving themselves, though they were in the hands of our enemies, is not a logical concept.
No.
Or
that when they weren't directly in the hands of those who mean us no good, we still didn't get a real sense of ourselves in time and space. I think about somebody like Benjamin Mays, who, of course, after he leaves Morehouse and retires from higher ed, you know, is at the Atlanta School Board.
Right.
You got to be able to leverage that type of institutional memory to make more progress. But you know, it's interesting because, as you say, one of the trends we see some incredible Black minds and incredible minds writing about these issues, writing about that effective work of the Black church, the Black school. And I think about now there's a new project. Apparently Harvard has gotten some money from, I think, the Mellon Foundation. And there's a project where they're looking to digitize and to gather the records of the Black Teachers Associations. And I'm saying, yeah, you don't get to do that. And yet you do, because you got money. And so, I mean, I've got like 12 of the Teachers Association histories over here, because when they merged the American Teachers Association, the Black teachers, merged with the National Education Association, one of the things they negotiated was, you're going to pay for us to tell our history. So all of the history of South Carolina and all the histories. But I'm raising this Harvard thing because it really bothers me, because this trend is we want to study Black life, but at the same time, it will be sterile. There will be no consequence from the lessons learned that are going to be channeled back into Black institutions.
Because the other thing, you're absolutely right. The other thing that just irks me when people's starting topics like this is, even when somebody's going to study, the Black church, right? The notion that somebody's going to study the Black church who ain't never been the member of NAN, right? Not only is that problematic for you,
right,
but also anybody who's been in the Black church understands a couple of things. Like, of course, I'm a person who grew up in the church. 80% of what we did in the church, right, was non-formal, which means whatever you're studying, that ain't what we did.
No, sir.
Right? Like, nobody has any record of us doing BTU on Sunday night.
The Baptist Training Union, brother. What do you know about that?
Or when we had choir rehearsal, there was nobody documenting when we had choir rehearsal and the kinds of songs we sang and why. That's not in that history because there was no physical documentation of that. But I'm not saying that's a problem. What I'm saying is the problem is, which is that we're paying the wrong people to write these histories.
Right. Or, well, now what they've done is, I think this is a trend that we've seen emerge over the last maybe 30 years or so. Certainly this last 20 years. Now what's being recruited is smart young Black people to be those informants.
Right.
So we can't, we're not looking at and I'll use the name because I think that, obviously read his work, admire him, no more August Myers or Herbert Aptheker's. Bones, this kind of, right. Exactly right. Now you've got generations of, well, we're Black. Don't penalize us because we're in these white institutions. And my thing is, no, absolutely. In fact, both of us, we know a lot of our friends. God bless you. Great work. But here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to ignore the fact that Black people are being hunted in the streets. And what you're doing, no matter how eloquent or how brilliant or how accurate your analysis is, isn't helping one bit. Because after Breonna Taylor, after Ahmaud Arbery down there in Georgia, after George Floyd, they started throwing statues at us. Everything changed. And now here we are. And there has not been a single major policy shift because they figured we can just hold on, throw a little money at this anti-racist training, do this kind of thing, and just hold on. This too will pass. And that's one of the patterns we face. So I hear you saying, maybe we should just get the hell out of here.
I'm telling you, and again, for years, I've been looking in every direction for what's the other option. I've been looking for the other option because yes, I've raised up a whole nation of folks, and quite literally, and so we got babies, and I'm very concerned about them. I'm very, these are my kids, However, the notion that I can tell them, listen, a better day is coming in America. I can't tell them that. I cannot tell them that.
And yet, the fact that you have the community you're in, because I've witnessed that firsthand. That is the better day.
Exactly. Now that's what I tell them. Now I can tell them that.
Because that's true.
It is true.
You don't even you don't even have to tell them that. They're
exactly. In fact, you have no idea how true that is.
I'm sure I don't, brother. I'm sure I don't, Baba.
We just get together sometimes I'll whisper to kids, you won't need a heaven after this.
How about that? Now you sound like Elijah Muhammad.
Right.
Elijah Poole from Sandersville, Georgia. That's what you sound like. You sound like
this is as crazy as like Harvard as an institution coming to find me and asking me to write the history of Harvard.
Let me tell you something. I'm gonna tell you how offended I am by this. There's one of these, man. If I go by, I'm gonna resist the urge to go over there. The history of the Mississippi Teachers Association.
Oh God.
Was written by a sister who was on faculty at Jackson State for decades. Her husband taught at Tougaloo, math professor. This woman's name was Cleopatra Davenport Thompson.
Yes.
He was born in a little town called Egypt, Mississippi, brother.
Now you come on now.
You can't even make Harvard.
You can't make that up.
You don't get to tell that story. I don't give a damn which black faces you got to come ask for the records.
That's
you
right.
don't touch those records.
That's right.
Because let me tell you something right now. And meanwhile, Deion Sanders said he's gonna be the football coach at Jackson State. See, this is what's gonna happen. A generation seems to be on the verge of coming that's gonna turn its back on your plantation football programs. And some of these boys and some of these girls, some of these women that played professional basketball, and some of these brothers that played professional football and basketball gonna come coach at these black colleges. And we're gonna crater your little racist plantation style schools because we were not fighting for your approval.
Absolutely.
At this point,
that's right.
You could have gone any university in the country. You still can. The reason you there
and yourself likewise.
Oh, listen, brother. But I'm gonna tell you right now, what you got me on the verge of right now, though, you are imagining even a different proposition because where we are is not enough. In other words, if all we're doing is facilitating in terms of patterns in this country, the next generation of cannon fodder for our open enemies, then maybe we got to reimagine even the project of what a black institution is.
Absolutely.
What does that look like, Bob?
Absolutely. Because really, what I'm saying here is black people have got to say, hey, white people, you know what? We're not mad at you.
Right.
We're not mad at you. You have exactly what you want. We going over here.
Right. In fact, as we say in the South, we ain't studying y'all.
Exactly. We ain't studying y'all. Exactly. And not doing it out of opposition, not doing it out of reaction, but doing it because we dream of the beauty and the glory of what we have when we come together, right? And so for me, that's why I've been doing the Ndugu-Nzinga project. Like I'm clear, Doc, that over the years, there are things that have happened. There are things that have happened in the community of Ndugu and Nzinga that is the most profound kind of black existence that a person could ever dream. And no salaries, nowhere.
That's right.
We're doing it because we believe in each other, right? Yeah. It really now, but it's also been the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh, of course. Because you're building community. I mean, this Elevate Festival, I mean, the three of the themes they talk about: equity, action, engagement. The equity, you putting soul equity in. There's no amount of money that can translate that, man. And in that type of investment, it's literally your life, brother.
Yes. And likewise you, because this is important for, it's very important for you to see that and receive that too, Doc, because you've been teaching hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids per year for all of this time. And I run into your kids everywhere. Folks like Jasmine Wilson and
Jazz, of course.
Yeah.
But you all like LaRue, man, my man up there. You got the East Coast on lock with Ndugu-Nzinga.
Yes.
And it's no secret that, I mean, we don't have the right to say we're tired. That ain't what I mean. But in terms of weariness, if we can't see where this is going, then Baba, I'm telling you, man, what did Francis Allen Watkins say? Bury me in a free land. I'm not trying. I hear you, man. I hear you.
And the truth of the matter is, the only reason I've hesitated is because I want to go with my people. And I'm gonna say this, and not all of them, but I want to go with a select number of our people, right? So that we imagine the nation before we started. You know what I mean? And so what I'm saying here is, I feel like Paul Cuffey, of course, Garvey, of course, so many others, we're telling us, don't throw away the possibility.
Oh, that's true. I agree.
Yeah, of black people, of y'all starting this game. Because the truth of the matter is, if you build it once, all that is just proof that you can.
What Garvey said, what people have done, people can do.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. No, but it's interesting you raised that, because that's the artists have always dreamt that world for us. Well, Larry Neal, Larry Neal said we got to have visions of a liberated future. And so, when you talk like this, Baba, I think about the fact that our people's commitment to this project, this settler project, has been one that's kind of been anchored in, this is how we survive. but we got to dream beyond that. And, you know, it can't be based, well, it can be anything, because what's clear to me, as I know we can go into a close, the thing is about to fall apart.
Right.
Because these white nationalists have decided that they're either going to rule or they're going to ruin it.
That's right.
They're
Trump
going.
said that. He said, if I don't get elected, I'm going to listen.
Oh, no question. And while Trump is out there with whatever is eating his brain, you know, Mitch McConnell and them have decided, you know, it's the judiciary. But see here's where they've overplayed their hand. They think somehow that people respect the law because it's some elevated sense of how human beings should behave. No, people respect the law, as Cedric Robinson writes in Black Movements in America. People respect the law for its ability to exact violence. Once you figure out that, once people realize that that the law is never going to be for them, that's when you're going to find out who we are. And you're not going to like that, especially when you ain't having no babies. So this country is on the verge of a transformation, whether they want it or not. So as you say, I mean, Bob, maybe we'll end where we began, because you started us down this road. What do we do when we're facing
Black people should be ahead of the curve?
Say it again, Bob.
Yeah, I'm just saying Black people should be ahead of the curve. And that
is, so what does that look like? What does that look like? Yes.
That we've got to take the risk to say, okay, is it going to be Ghana? Is it going to be where is it that we're going to expatriate? Where is it that we're going to plant some other seeds? Because see, the worst thing that a person can do, right, is pray for a sinking ship.
How about that?
Right, that's the worst thing you can do. Right, you don't need prayer at that time, and swimming won't even help you. But see, part of our problem in America is that, Doc, we have used the majority of our energy. We have used the majority of our energy as Black people trying to transform other people.
Well, I mean, that's part of the nature, right? I mean, we're looking at people as human beings, even when they don't look at themselves as human. I mean, think about Baldwin and them, but you know, so you saying?
I think Baldwin, part of Baldwin's problem for me, right? And I think there are ways, and I know, you know, listen, I've gotten into so many arguments about this, but there are ways that I think Baldwin missed the mark too.
Woo! You
better. Baldwin is my man. Let me be clear. I love me some Baldwin.
No question. No question.
Right. Baldwin is absolutely my man. However, Baldwin's own self-hatred, even in terms of his self-perceived ugliness, made it such that he never had an imagination of Africa, right, as bringing anything salvific, right, to Black folks in America.
Now that's true. That's true. So in the way station, then, brother, to quote from the Panthers, survival pending revolution, can the way stations look like in Atlanta or Jackson, Mississippi, or I mean, like where we can kind of.
I think so. I think, you know, for me, and this last thing I'm gonna say, I think we have to do something that I think our ancestors did on plantation, and that is, I think we have to create some underground institutions.
No question about it. No question about it. And some ways to access them.
Exactly, and ways to access them, and ways that they are not public, ways that they're not accessible to the media, ways that they are not accessible to the average person, institutions that we can do some training in, some teaching, some training to our children that other people never ever hear about, but everybody's gonna see the fruit of it on that day.
Yes, and the ones that are visible can still anchor in a truth, in character, in a vision, whether it be a festival like Elevate, whether it be the work we try to do in the classrooms, whether it's the stuff like Leaders and them do at the Hammond's house, we can still, our young people can dream.
Absolutely.
And then we got those other space. They say, now, if we see where you're looking, if you're looking the right way, come over here for a minute. We need
and that's the answer. That's the answer. Black people dreaming is the answer.
Yes, sir.
And we can work, and we should work as we dream. We need black schools, we need Black colleges like we need air.
No question.
We just need some other complementary institutions.
Well, Bob, let me tell you, this is a real honor. You know, we talk like this all the time, but to be able to do it in public with these folks, thank you, Leatrice. Thank you, Elevate. Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, everyone who made this possible, brother. And thank you, Bobby. You know I love you.
I love you, man. You know that. Yes.
No, Bobby. Yes,
and man, we elevate together.
Oh, no question about it. We're going to elevate back up into grading some more papers on this virtual.
Did you hear me?
Woo, brother.
Man.
hey, all you Negroes that think a Black college, no, sir. Don't try this at home, brother. All you academics, our friends hiding out in them white schools. We'll see y'all later.
We'll see y'all. We got to turn these papers back this week.
No question. Goodbye.
We appreciate y'all. Bye, y'all.